Okay, welcome back or welcome to the Yogi Roth Show, and I am joined now by Mike Yam, the face, the voice of the Pac-12 Networks. We are talking kind of March Madness because it's
Oh,
kind of crazy. Mike, been a while since you've been on the pod. Definitely a different tone than previous conversations.
yeah.
You just got back from Vegas. Coronavirus has obviously had a huge impact on the world, and in our world, on the sports world. And I kind of wanted to get a first take account of what was it like to be literally in the middle of it, announcing it on television, the different phases of how the tournament went for you.
Just wild, man. I felt like the last time I was on your podcast, we were driving from Portland to Corvallis, getting ready to go watch Jonathan Smith's team on the football field, right? I think that might have been it. And you're right. I mean, the tone, and I mean, hell, we're not even sure if we're going to see these teams be able to take the field over the next couple weeks or so and just get ready for the upcoming season. You're right. Being in Vegas, and I thought I was going to be hanging out with you at least for one day. And there was the conference, the Pac-12. I will give them credit. Went ahead. You were going to be involved in our Hall of Honor ceremonies, which is essentially kind of like a Hall of Fame, and they canceled that and were proactive about it, which I thought was good. And then you just sort of see the news unfold over the course of a couple of hours. I mean, heading to Vegas, Yogi, you and I were talking about this. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't at least a little nervous getting onto a flight and heading to this tournament where you're going to be in T-Mobile Arena with thousands of fans. And I know what the news reports have said with the low number of victims, but one, the testing in this country obviously hasn't been great. So you just got to assume there's a significantly larger number of people who have the virus that don't even realize they have it. And then just being in the arena, Matt Muehlbach and Earl Watson were the analysts on that show. And usually on day one, Yogi, it's a quiet day. There's fans there, but it's not like the championship game. It's certainly not like the semis. And as the tournament goes on, more and more people show up. So there's opportunities to sit courtside. And we were, and I'm kind of looking around. I'm like, you know what? I don't really want to be around people. And you know me well enough. I mean, you're one of my best friends. You know, I'm not a germaphobe. That's just not kind of how I roll. But I watched pretty much every game just from our set, which was a great view anyway. And it was kind of sectioned off. And I was just like, why expose myself to even more and more contact with people? Everyone talks about that social distancing. I was doing that. The hand sanitizer, our crew joke, because I was walking around hand sanitizer, I don't think my hands have ever been so clean in my entire life. Washing my hands, I was using Clorox wipes, wiping down the desk and my iPad, the microphone handle. No one else is touching the mic except for me. And yet here I am just kind of wiping the stool that I'm sitting on, just my bag. And Earl and Matt were kind of teasing me, but every time I said, "You guys want sanitizer?" they stuck out their hands. So it really was wild. And Yogs, as the day just unfolded, at least on day one, you heard about Fred Hoiberg. You didn't know what was going on with the Big Ten and their conference tournament. I have some friends that work at Big Ten Network and was kind of going back and forth with them via text. I thought the response from it was about halfway through the session. They decided no fans on day number 2 of the tournament. And to me, that was a good decision. We had Larry Scott on. He explained it. And it was, look, it's health and safety. And Yogi, like we're sports fans. I mean, we want to see the NCAA tournament. You and I spend, every Saturday during football season watching games and all the homework that you're doing to get ready for our shows. Like I woke up this morning and, in some ways, like I felt cheated, and I'm a broadcaster. Like I'm not in the gym 7 days a week getting ready for the season. My college days are well past me now. And here it is, seniors and, any upperclassmen who thought they were going to be able to play in the NCAA tournament. That just kind of flew by the wayside. They got to be heartbroken. I think about Oregon women's basketball and Sabrina not going to the WNBA, a transcendent player who had an opportunity to win a national championship. And now her and her teammates got 3 lottery picks maybe on that team. They will go down as one of the all-time great teams, but not have a national championship to show for it. And obviously extenuating circumstances. But Yogi, this has been crazy, man. You and I were texting for a couple days here. It's been wild. And that's the only word that I can use to describe what this has been like.
Okay, that's a great starting point. So This podcast, as you know, is all about the intersection of sports and humanity. Usually we've got
Yeah.
a college football lean. We're talking all sports now. So many things have been canceled. I think pretty much everything other than like the entirety of spring football practice
Yeah.
has been canceled. SC suspended practice. Stanford, UCLA, numerous teams.
ASU, I just saw
Yeah.
that email. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I was going to be calling that spring
Yeah.
game. It's maybe not happening anymore. But I want to I want to go into the human side with you. So Wednesday of this week, or whenever you're listening to it, the week of the conference tournaments, you're there, and I'm watching you on TV. I knew my flight was already canceled. They canceled the Hall of Honor, as you referenced. But take us through, like, in between games, you're on air, but like there are pockets where you get to kick out and talk to administrators or
Yes.
talk to Commissioner Scott or, our president Mark Shukin or Larry Myers. Like you're connected. So like as a human, like what happens Wednesday? Like the first game happens. It's a great game. The second game happens. It's a great game. And I just take us behind the scenes if you will.
So you're watching the games, and there is this nervous energy as we're heading to the arena. But Yokes, you get ready for a game. How jacked are you before the game? Pre-game, you're walking on the field. Like,
Oh, let's go, baby.
yeah, it's go time, And I wasn't like you. I wasn't athletic enough to play at the Division I level. But I was a fan. Like this is my athletic arena, right? Like I love doing these shows, and I'm heartbroken right now, but there's a nervous vibe heading into the arena. I'm walking from the hotel inside T-Mobile, and I got hand sanitizer in my pocket, go through security, and you see everyone wearing gloves. Then you get out to the set, and I'm first thing I'm asking, like, hey, where are the Clorox wipes? And you sit there, and you've said this to me for years, and it couldn't be more spot on. There's this theme around sports where it doesn't matter your political beliefs, your religious beliefs, what color you are, it is this unifying force. And as soon as the show goes on, you don't think about it. Like I'm not thinking about all of the things that are surrounding what's happening in the world. Like you're there, you're focused in on the show. And as soon as the commercial break hits, you have a moment to just pause and think about everything. I had one fan come up to me or was like yelling, Mike, I'm friends with Yogi. Mike, I'm friends with Yogi. So of course I look up, and not for nothing, Yogs, and this, like you talk to everyone, so everyone thinks that you are like BFF with them. It is unbelievable. So we're swapping stories, and he's telling me kind of like how he knows you and kind of the football world. And then you're hanging around this set, and the vibe is just so different in the breaks. But as soon as the show goes well, and I had a blast with Matt and Earl, the games start, and you get this exciting game. And there were only pockets where I'm thinking about what's happening because, as you referenced, like there's conversations with Larry Scott, there's conversations with a couple of the ADs that I ran into, our bosses like Larry Myers and David Coppett, like they're all thinking about it. Like they're less concerned about what's happening on the floor. I mean, I have to be because we're about to do those shows, those halftimes and those fill and those game breaks. But I mean, they are glued to their phones, and the amount of text messages and emails that I was getting, I can't even imagine, kind of what decisions they're trying to make, because we're talking about, this conference tournament, Yogs. Like this is big money. This is the NCAA tournament right around the corner. There were maybe 7 teams from our conference that were looking to play in the tournament, in the big dance, and there was a lot riding on the results over the next couple days, of that tournament in Vegas, and we're not going to get it. But, you see the press release come through your phone, and you say, oh, this is real. Day 2, there's going to be no fans here. And I'd be lying to you if I said to you I wasn't heartbroken for the fans that made the trip to Vegas, but happy for myself, which I guess I kind of sound selfish. Like I just limiting contact, man. Like you get worried about it. Yogs, you're on the road. How many months or how many weeks out of the year do you think, if you had to guess?
Probably 25.
25. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's a lot of hotel nights. Have you ever wiped down your hotel?
Never even thought about it.
Never thought about it. I brought wipes with me, and it's the first thing I did when I walked into my hotel room.
Wow.
And once again, like I'm not a germaphobe. I'm just not, and that's the thought process.
Yeah, and you're aware that like the more we stress about it, the worst it's going to be, even for
Yeah.
in our own individual circle or the circles of our families. So like and you're the guy on television, like you're the calming voice of reason, right? I mean, that's what entertainment does. Like we got into it for a bunch of reasons. At the end of the day, you can influence millions of people are watching you,
Yeah.
especially March Madness. It's one of the, if not, I don't know our ratings, but I'd imagine it's one of the, if not the highest rated thing that we do because we own all the games and there's
Yeah.
so many cool games. So with that said, when did you like you see all kind of the dominoes happening? Conferences, you mentioned, the coach of the Bull, like people being sick, the pandemic growing. When did you like literally hear, hey, we are going to not allow fans? And then when did you hear the conference tournament's canceled?
Yeah, so the fan thing. So day one, we had Oregon State and Utah, and then the Arizona Washington game. Those are the first two. So right after we were doing like I forget which, I think it was right before the Arizona Washington game. Yes, it was. There was a Phil show. He's got 30 minutes in between games, no matter how long they go. And at the end, they said to me, "Hey, we're going to do a release. Like, there's no fans. So, like, you're finding out sort of in real time in that moment. You knew that it was a possibility, but Yogi, to be honest with you, I think the biggest reason why the tournament was canceled, the NCAA tournament also was canceled, is the NBA suspending their season. Once that happened, and Earl Watson, who was with me, Earl is so dialed in on with all of these NBA guys, and he is getting flooded with text messages, and he's turning to me. At one point he goes, "Yo, the NBA is thinking about suspending the season." I'm like, "No way, are you serious?" And he's like, "Yeah." Sure enough, within an hour, that's what happened. So you find that out, that the no fan deal, I was finding out in real time. We did that announcement on air. We found out so quickly, Yogi, like we didn't even have the time. Our graphics people in our control room didn't even have the time to type out the release to put it up on our screen. So I was handed a piece of paper from, one of our field producers, and he says, "Here you go." And I'm scanning it in the break, and I'm being told, "Hey, the release is going to be up there." And we just didn't have enough time. So you're conveying that news to everyone. And, we knew, but like, I don't even know if it fully processed in my head as I'm saying what's happening in that moment. And then fast forward, we finished that show, and I turned to the guys. I'm like, "Yeah, I don't think we're playing tomorrow." I said, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, but just the way it's going. I mean, think about this, like within hours, Yogi, the turn that it takes. And then once the Hoiberg situation happened, I had enough buddies of mine that were, kind of around that tournament that said, "Hey, like this is getting like scary." Like people were worried. So from a staffing standpoint, I just thought to myself, they're not going to play these games. And we left the arena, at night. We finished up, all the games play, and we finish up, and I'm walking back with Earl and Matt, and I'm thinking to myself, like, what do you think the odds are we play? And everyone had a different answer. I thought we were like 50-50, 60-40, still leaning towards playing just without the fans, because we knew that was official. And then I woke up to just text messages and emails. And we had a staff meeting. Yogi, we never do meetings day of the tournament, like all talent, like you just don't do that. And it's been a few years, we've never done that. But the night before, they said to us, 10 a.m. T-Mobile in the green room, everyone be there. So we had known as we were walking over to T-Mobile that was going to happen. And I did like a quick little thing with Larry Scott, and we had people think about this, Yogi. It was uneasy being in Vegas because you're around all these people, but you're in Los Angeles, I'm in San Francisco. We have crews. I mean, we got a couple hundred people that work at Pac-12 Network, and I know it's uneasy for people to be in the office around other people, seeing the news, reading everything on Twitter, and yet still having to execute your job so that the shows go on. Well, guess what? Day two, no one's in the office. So it's limited staff. We couldn't even put that thing on television. So we released it on social media. But it just goes to tell you like all the different moving parts and just how much consideration you have to have for your staff. And that's why you're seeing all these major companies, whether it's, Amazon. I saw something about AT&T, telling their staff, like, work from home if you can do it. And that's what we're doing right now at Pac-12 Network.
Wow. And I misspoke. Fred Hoiberg now at Nebraska, formerly of the Bulls. But okay, so you always you always ask this question to somebody. You say, set the scene, right? So I'm going to steal your
Yeah.
question. So set the scene in like Las Vegas. Like, what does that place feel like when you're there?
Weirdest, Yogs, the weirdest. It and I guess I kind of mean it in a bad way, but it just what the reality is. Like, think about whatever your preconceived notion is on Las Vegas, right? Fun, lights, glitz, glamour. You're going out. It's the shows. It's fun, right? So you leave T-Mobile, and the first day we were watching some shoot arounds and some practices the day before. So on Tuesday I land. Everyone gets delayed heading to Vegas. It was a 2-hour delay for me, but just kind of going through Twitter and everyone on our crew, everyone's late. So we land, get to the hotel, wipe down my room, go to T-Mobile. But it's weird because it's like business as usual. It's Vegas. Like, you hear all like the casino slot machines, like the sensory, your experience from like just sensing it, like it's no different than any other year. But in the back of your mind, it's so different. And when you leave T-Mobile, like, you're just looking around going, you have this heavy feeling, but it doesn't match the environment. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
I'm in San Francisco, you're in LA, you were telling me you're Trader Joe's, right? Like, how crazy is that? I was at Safeway doing food shopping after I landed, and it just, it's chaos. Like, there's 100 million people in there. The lines are insanely long. It matches reality. And Vegas, like, it didn't match reality. So it's just this really weird dichotomy.
Wow. So sports is usually, and we love it because it's this bridge from, reality or the outside world, and then you can kind of hone in and zone out and for 2 days or for 2 hours, right? 3 hours, 4 hours, it's a
Yeah.
football game, but March
Yeah.
Madness is like for days, right? And that's part of why we love it. Did you feel like that that feeling kind of evaporate because the games were being canceled and like this hope around like, hey, at least I had my tournament to distract me for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I always feel, Yogi, I don't know if I've had this conversation with you. Sometime I love my job. I love working with you. I love doing our shows. We watch sports and we get paid to talk about it. Like, that is legitimately the greatest job, at least in my mind, you could ever have. Like, I love work. I am sad today that I don't have a show to do. And, I often feel sometimes though, like, I'm not contributing enough. Like, what else can I do for people around me? Like, how do you help, right? And I just feel like my job, like, I wish I was smart enough to be able to figure out cures for Alzheimer's, for example. Like, I can't do that. So what's my skill set? Like, I think I'm, a competent broadcaster who can go on set and at least give someone a fun 30-minute pregame show or a postgame show where we can educate and show you what you just watched, our halftime show where you can just sit back and just forget for, a 3-hour window or whatever, how long it is. And I feel like that's the contribution that at least I can be a part of. And now, we find out that there's no games on day 2. Like, I didn't get to see the top 4 seeds play. I thought there was going to be at least one upset. I felt like Washington State was going to beat ASU in the night game, but like, I don't know. And I don't know if that was going to happen. It's just, I woke up and I was disappointed. And then you have a little bit of a freak out moment. Like, the first thing I did, and our good friend who's my agent, Kristen Bredis, calls me when I'm at the hotel and she's like, hey, like, what's your plan? I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm going to try to fly out. My flight's Sunday. I don't know what to do. She's like, well, just rent a car now. And I'm like, yeah, it's a good idea. Got off the phone with her, rented a car. I didn't use it, but like, you're considering doing a 9-hour drive. Cause I'm like, do I want to get onto a plane right now? Do I have to, how am I going to change my flight? So like, there's all these different moving parts that are involved, at least cause you're trying to figure out your own stuff. And then at the same time, like, I woke up, I got back to San Francisco. I ended up flying back and, my paycheck, I'm probably like one of like 5 people at Pac-12 Network that doesn't do direct deposit. So my paycheck was at my desk. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to drop my suits off. And I picked up my paycheck and it hit me. I think I posted this on Instagram. Like, I looked in our control room, Yogi. It was like 6:30, 6:40 and completely empty. I mean, the office is empty. And I'm thinking to myself, like, we should be talking about UCLA Cal right now. Like, I looked at my watch and I realized the windows of the times of the games. I'm thinking like, Is Matt Bradley balling out? Like, are we seeing Chris Smith have a hell of a game? Like, those are the things that should be happening. It shouldn't be a barren office, a control room that's usually buzzing. It shouldn't be empty. Like, that's not on day 2 of the Pac-12 tournament. Like, that's just not how it's supposed to be. So it kind of hit me then. And then I woke up this morning and I was really disappointed because I know, like, my living and your living, Yogi, it comes from athletics. And the fact that we don't have these sports, like, I almost feel a little lost. Like, I did a bunch of radio hits this morning. You called me, we were catching up, and you're like, oh, come on the pod. I'm like, yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what else? Like, I want to do shows. Like, but which show do you do? There's no games. And it's so disappointing. And it's like, to be fair, like, we're in a sports bubble, dude. Like, we are in this our little world. And yet, if you take this macro view, Italy decimated right now. What's going on in China, Europe in its entirety, like, just the scare here in this country. I got, CNBC up right now, and I'm looking at the stock market kind of zigzagging every single direction. And just, like, people are scared. And I get that. I'm cautiously optimistic that this thing will be over in, a couple weeks and the virus will do what it's going to do. But, I'm checking in on my parents. They're a little bit older. I know you probably doing the same thing. And I'm less concerned, Yogi, getting sick, but more concerned having the virus and then spreading it to someone who's going to be around someone else who's a little bit older, right? Like, if there's a nurse who's going to be in a hospital or takes care of elderly, patients, or is just really close with their grandparents and they see them regularly. Like, I used to see my grandparents when they were alive pretty regularly. Like, those are the things that I think about in terms of a health standpoint. Like, I'm 38, we're the same age. We're both young, we're healthy. If we get this and we get sick, like, we'll by and large, we'll be okay. It's just, I worry about everyone who's a little bit older. And, to me, that's kind of the scary thing about all of this stuff.
Yeah. Okay. A couple more before you let you bounce.
Yeah.
What was it like with the staff, like, in Vegas? Like,
Yeah.
Like, we're so proud of where we've worked, and we wear the shield and deal with criticisms often and back it up and aren't afraid to bow up. I'm curious for you, like, being on the inside, what was it like kind of looking at your peers? Because it seemed, at least for me at home here in Venice, like, it was very, like, smooth. Like, nothing seemed like rigid, panicked. But just kind of curious if you take us inside, your thoughts.
Well, appreciate that. I'm glad it didn't look panicked. I won't even just say the Vegas crew, because the way we do our shows, we have the majority of our staff are in San Francisco. And so I obviously wasn't there. I was in Vegas, but you couldn't tell, like, the frenetic pace or the things that provide chaos are the same things, whether it's breaking news or quick turnarounds of video or essentially a buzzer beater shot like we got in the first game. Like, that creates an energy of getting that video, thinking about, hey, when you get Lucas and Tinkle on set, what are the things that you're going to ask them? How, that's where the adrenaline comes in. And I think in those moments when you're watching the game and you're sitting in a control room or on the set, your singular focus is, how do I make the show really good? How are we going to ball out? And let's make this fun. And you don't think about the hand sanitizer that's sitting right next to you on the set. I go to that when the break comes, but I can't express this enough. And you're right. Like, the network has gotten criticism for whatever reason. But you leave, like I did after day one, and I was pumped for our team. Like, the crew did an unbelievable job. Everyone was focused in on what they had to do, and they delivered. Like, I felt like one of the best days we've had on air, certainly in the tournament. It was so much fun. I wish the circumstances were different, but I can't tip my cap enough to our team in Vegas, who, as soon as they're stopped working, we're all talking about it. But while you're doing the job, you're not talking about it. And maybe I didn't help the situation because I'm the only, well, I shouldn't say the only one. I'm in Vegas constantly using hand sanitizer, and I'm offering it to people. I'm pulling it out of my pocket, and, I'm not trying to get people nervous. Like, I just want everyone to be okay and safe. So I don't, it was coming from a different place of not panic, but just, kind of care for other people. But I can't say enough good things about how the crew handled what is, I would imagine, a really tough day, especially when you don't have the distraction of being in Vegas at the game. You can focus in on that. Our folks in San Francisco absolutely they kicked ass. It's a podcast, so I can say it. Yeah, they kicked ass.
Yeah. Bring it, baby. I'll tell you what, from watching it, and we watch everything that's pretty much on our channels. I was watching with our little guy Zane, and it was cool because Zane was like, I've had dinner with everybody on television, like Lewis, Ted, you, and Ashley. Like, I'm like, this, how cool. I told Amy, my wife, I'm like, how cool is this for Zane? Like, he knows literally no matter what game was on, he knew somebody.
That's awesome.
Cool. But I will say,
was he focused though? Like, was he focused on television and the games, or was he rolling around with those trucks?
No, yeah, he was rolling with trucks. And but I will say this: it's his birthday today when we're recording this, and he's got a basketball, and getting ready to open when he gets home from school here, and he's pumped. So he's a huge basketball fan. And
yes.
But with that being said, he's probably waiting for his birthday present from you. But that's okay. Just a FaceTime would be perfect.
Amazon Prime, baby.
Yeah, there we go. But no, on a serious note, watching you guys from your pregame show to Donnie Mac and Roxy to Ashley to then Lewis and the crews in the truck, Molinari and Scott and all those guys, like everybody that did it, and then Ted, of course, who I love with all my heart, and Bill. Like, I was just like, man, that's the best basketball coverage I've ever seen. And not to like poo-poo like anything else that's ever been on our air, but I was just like, man, I was so informed. And I track Pac-12 basketball, but I learned a lot. I was watching how Earl analyzes and Matt and your transitions, and it was just like, man, that's badass. So on that note, Mike, I want to ask you this. What's the one story that you looked forward to telling that you hadn't, that you would have projected like, yeah, I'm going to talk about this individual or this story?
I can only give you one.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to go, and it's lame because it's the obvious one, but Tuesday we land, we do a staff meeting, like everyone in Vegas who's involved with anything. Kyle Reichling, who's one of our senior coordinating producers, he organizes it and he leads it. And every year in Vegas, it's actually pretty cool. Larry Myers, our boss, was a part of it, and he goes, hey, we got a new member of the team, and he introduces Earl Watson. And I was about to start yelling speech, to put Earl on the spot, and it looked like it was going that way. But every single year, it's the same routine. We go through the day's flow, and at the end of the meeting, someone says, Don, what do you think of the season? Like, Don's kind of like the elder statesman, and on the football side, it would be you doing it. So Donnie Mac kind of leans back in his chair. Don, by the way, drove from LA to Vegas because his flight kept getting canceled. He just got into the car, drives an hour. His check engine oil light goes on, had to get an oil change, and then makes it to Vegas. But Don leans back and he starts talking about, the teams. He said, look, I can go through all the storylines. He's like, everyone in this room knows them. But he said, Peyton Pritchard is in the national conversation for player of the year. He was our player of the year. And yet we still don't talk enough about him. He said, I don't remember a guy. You can throw DeAndre Ayton out there, who was player of the year a couple of years ago, and obviously, was playing in the NBA. But he said, I don't remember a guy having this type of season, this dominant in our league in a really long time. And I know we all know that, and we all talk about him, and we all love him up, but we don't do enough of it. And to me, to not see a kid who's hung around for 4 years. You and I on the football side, we were talking about the transfer portal, guys moving around, quarterbacks looking for another opportunity. Well, here it is, a dude who goes 4 years. And if you're that good in college basketball, you don't play 4 years, but he's that good. A 4-year guy having one of the best individual seasons we have ever seen. To not see him in the Pac-12 tournament get to play as a 1 seed. Now, granted, he balled out a year ago. They won 4 straight games to play themselves in. To not be able to see him on the floor was so disappointing. A bunch of pros that we're going to play on day 2. I mean, it's insane the amount of talent that was in this conference, and seeing the underdogs like Cal and Mark Fox and his team. I mean, Matt Bradley's only a sophomore, so he'll be around. But CJ Ellaby, like, That dude has a historic game, snaps like a 10-year losing streak in the tournament. They hadn't won a game in the tournament in 10 years, Yogi, and they pull off an upset win as an 11 seed. We had two double. I can't speak enough about it, but that might be the last time LB plays in a Washington State uniform. I hope he comes back, but there's that world, and at least I got one great shot, and Lucas hitting that near buzzer beater for Oregon State to start off the coverage. Like, I'll think back 10 years from now when you say March memory, I'll go 2020, Tinkle to Lucas, game winner, day one Pac-12 tournament, and then there was no more games. That's what I would remember probably the most. But that storyline, you asked for one, I gave you like 10. But Pritchard, dude, that guy's unbelievable.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Okay, so before I let you go, I don't know if the listeners know this, but you and Ashley and Ted, myself, and a host of others, when we go to college campuses, we often talk to the journalism school.
Yeah.
You're amazing at it. I mean, you'll watch reels. Like, if anybody listening wants criticism or coaching, just hit up Mike_Yam on all social media platforms, and he'll gladly help you out.
I got a little free time now.
I can watch some free time. But there's this whole thing, and I'm going to ask you to maybe lean on a subject that I don't know if you want to talk about or not, so you can bail it if you'd like.
Sure.
But we hear about fake news, right? We started really at the previous election, and it's become this topic that is like probably like in the vernacular now. Like, if you looked at, I don't know, is it a word like an encyclopedia or a dictionary? Like, there's a definition behind it, there's a history behind it. How do you feel about that now regarding this and the coronavirus? Like, do you feel people are like, you know what, the hype isn't as intense as it should be, or the hype isn't what it should be? Like, what are your general journalistic thoughts around everything going on, being said? Every country's had different timelines and different ways they've dealt with this, but just kind of curious your take as someone who's been in this profession for almost 20 years now.
Yeah, it's a good question, because you sit back. I mean, this is real. I mean, people are getting sick. There's a virus that is spreading. There is a pandemic right now. The idea that this is not real is it's insane. And I think we're now creeping to a point where there is an understanding of how serious that this could be, especially for, people over 60 years of age. I mean, no one wants to get sick. I mean, that's obvious. But I think the thing that people need to realize, whether or not you buy into how severe this is, or you think it's mild, or you don't think it's a big deal, from a human standpoint, I would say if you don't buy into it, that's okay. That's your prerogative. Like, that's all well and good. But we're all on this planet together. We're all living in this country. We're all in the same cities. Just be respectful. Like, your beliefs doesn't mean that you can't be respectful to someone else's beliefs. And to me, if I'm anxious about contracting the virus or spreading the virus to someone who I care about, who could get sick and get really sick and face some of the more harmful effects of that disease, like, be respectful of that. And this idea of mocking, and the respect thing is not just the jokes about it or making someone feel bad. It's be okay with using hand sanitizer, be okay with washing hands, be okay with respecting someone else's needs to be safe. And I think we can all do that. Like, we can all disagree or agree on how significant this virus is. But I think the one thing we can all agree on is we need to have respect for other people and their feelings about this particular subject. It's public health, it's safety. And to me, I think I would love to see more journalists look, and I think they're doing a great job conveying, the reports and how to stay safe. But I don't think we talk nearly enough about the people who don't buy into it, the things that they can do just out of respect to the people who do believe it, to make sure that they feel safe as well. And that's probably the one thing I wish more and more people, and I don't took part in, but Yogi, I don't even think that's just like a coronavirus deal. Like, I just think we all need to be respectful of everyone else's opinions. If you're a Trump person, cool, like whatever, like we can disagree. If you're not, okay, cool, like we can disagree on that too. But, at the end of the day, like, you can't alienate people for like what they think, how they feel, what they look like, what they believe in. Like, that's just not cool.
Yeah, I think I think back to the David Letterman show on Netflix. He had Obama on, I
Yeah.
think his first episode, and the one thing he said was he really talked about how news has changed from, when we were growing up or our parents were our age, like the news came on at 6 o'clock and you watched the news and it was 30 minutes and it was just like kind of the truth. Like this is what happened. And then all of a sudden cable came, entertainment came, and so much opinion came in, and now it's a blend, right? I mean, we could say the
Wow.
same thing with ESPN. Like you could watch SportsCenter for the news, but then you watch the show with Stephen A. and he's yelling at somebody,
Yep.
claiming it's the news, but it's not the news, So I just it's a topic that I'm curious your take. I'm going to ask Ted Robinson about it because I think it's hard to delineate truth, hysteria, like, and then your reactions to it. So we always go to like, a relative general extreme, right? Just based on how we started this, you being at Safeway, me being at Trader Joe's, versus like poised, what are the appropriate, appropriate next steps, like whatever it is. And I still don't feel personally like there's real clarity, at least of like where we can get that from, because it feels as though there's always an angle. Like let's save the market or let's save the, whatever, whether it's Biden, Bernie, or Trump, like save the reputation. And
Sure.
I just think it's an interesting time for young journalists to be able to cut through with truth. And that's why I was talking to Mark Sanchez the other day and I said, hey man, remember, like everything that comes out of your mouth, you just got to believe it. Like don't let a producer put an idea into your head. And I think for young journalists, as this is coming up and everybody has their platform, it's the same thing, is you kind of live the truth that you know to be true. And if you want to go further, then be confident in going further versus just following a crowd or an angle or a lean. And I don't know. I would be thinking that if I was 22. Hell, I'm thinking it now at 38 of, hey, what's my take and stance on this thing right now?
It's actually a great call, and I'm actually eager to hear what Ted has to tell you because he's kind of an OG in this business. There's nothing wrong with, hey, these are the facts. This is what's happening. Report on those. And like to your point, Ted was in Vegas with me. He comes on our set, like we're talking about the sport. Like we have conversations about, hey, what would it be like for no fans to be there in the NCAA tournament or on day 2 of this tournament? Those are the types of conversations you can have. I mean, how many times have you put up a tweet, Yogi, where someone will take commentary and position it as fact at another network about one of our players on the Pac-12 conference, which is just not accurate. I mean, it's just that fake news aspect like does exist. And you're right. You need to be able to convey what you think, and don't let someone else, like your conversation with Mark, like, Mark, just say what you believe and say how you feel. And there's nothing wrong with that because you'll always be able to support it because those are what your beliefs are. So to me, the way Ted handled, the coverage with Bill during their games, like they called a game, and like, yeah, they made reference to what was happening, and there weren't irresponsible conversations that were taking place, and they weren't, spinning it ahead and creating mass panic. It was like, hey, these are the facts. This is what's happening in Vegas right now around those teams. And I don't think from a young journalist perspective, you can ever go wrong with reporting on the facts that are actually happening.
Yeah, that's great, man. Okay, so I miss you. I wish we were
I
talking spring
know, man.
football.
Seriously, dude. I was all pumped. Like you were supposed to be in studio with me a little bit. You were traveling. Can we get some shows going? Like I know there's no games. I was emailing our bosses. I'm like, yo, we gotta do some podcasts from home or something.
Well, maybe we do that. I mean, maybe we break down. We got 12 teams. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm looking at literally every position group. I've built out depth charts for every position group because I'm
of
bored
course
out
you
of my
have.
mind in the off season. So we got stuff to talk about. So,
Oh
all right, if
yeah.
you're listening, hit us up on social. What do you want to hear about in Pac-12 sports, Pac-12 athletics, Pac-12 football? For me specifically, Mike can talk about anything. And of course, most importantly, my take on this, Mike, to put a bow on it, is this pandemic, it's an opportunity to pause for a minute, take a breath.
Yeah.
Like our country's always on fast forward to a certain degree. Be around your loved ones, hold them tighter, wash your hands as you referenced, hand sanitize, and take a breath. And we'll all be fine and help your neighbor. And I think if we do that, at least we'll get through it because we know we're going to get through it, and we'll
Yeah.
deal with whatever comes next.
Well said. By the way, did you ever think you would be telling people to wash their hands as much as you and I have said it, or use hand sanitizer?
No, I mean we call Zane Mowgli because he's always in the dirt all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, we're doing it, man, and it's gonna be an interesting time. Like if you think of our lifetime, we have 9/11, we'll
Yeah.
have, the Trump presidency because it was just so out of left field,
Yep.
um, and then we'll have this. Like, but I'm good. I'm cool right now.
Yeah.
Like we
Do
don't
you
need
do you
and Kobe.
think Oh, and Kobe too. I know. Do you think that this is from a sports perspective? Because this is not where the coronavirus is led itself to be in sports because of all the cancellations. 9/11 was not a sports deal, obviously. Like that was as tragic an event as could ever happen. But I think about, I was in New York at the time. I was still in college, and people were debating whether or not to play the games. Like that was an emotional deal. Like how do you go and play? And the thought was, I still remember I'm a Mets fan, so Mike Piazza and that home run. My God, like that's the greatest home run in the history of the world. Just knowing how much it meant to, I think, like a country, a city, however you want to describe it. Just that moment. Now I think, hey, like there's this coronavirus, and it has put a complete halt on everything in the sports world. It's amazing to me, and not in a good way. It's just I can't get over just how significant the effects are. And we're fortunate, Yogs, man. We live in this country, and we have an opportunity to go outside of our doors and go to Safeway and Trader Joe's and wait in long lines, and drive our cars home and hang out because we got a birthday party and play some hoops. Like in other countries, man, like they don't have that opportunity. They certainly don't have it right now with some of the quarantine. So it's just wild. It really is.
Yeah, there's a great moment in time right now to make sure we, pause before we speak, right? In terms of having some perspective.
Yeah.
Like schools just, my sister's a superintendent of schools in Brooklyn. They're shut down for a while.
Yeah.
I talked to some other people. They're down for the whole year in some states, in some parts of the country.
Wow.
So, you think about that and you think about, my wife and I were talking last night, like school lunches, like kids that don't necessarily have the economic means to you know have food at home like they expected at school. Like there's so many different lenses to take and not like be hysterical about like the toilet paper line or whatever the headline that you're reading. And I think that's kind of like the duty of when you get to live in this country. Like
Yeah.
you take care of each other. And you wrote this beautiful article, and I'll make sure we link about in the show notes, that was just fascinating about like where you came from. Immigrant family. My wife, she's an immigrant. My mom's a refugee. Like we all have
Yeah.
our story there of like, okay, we'll be all right. Like let's not attack. Let's just try to tell the truth and support one another. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's there's those cheesy phrases, and you can always talk about, being respectful, and it's not cheesy, man. It's reality. It's how we should all be thinking. So, but yeah, no, it's crazy, man. You never know what people are going through, and everyone's got a story. And, you do an awesome job on your show, and you're, helping people share their stories, which is kind of awesome. Cause not everyone totally gets, the platform or has a platform to be able to share some of their moments and their stories. So I salute you for that.
thanks, bro. All right. Well, I'm going to tell everybody how to find you. Usually end the podcast like, how can people find you? It's Mike_Yam on everything. Okay. Hit him up. How's that?
Consistency. That's perfect, man. Yeah. The underscore is big. So
Yeah, it is. All right, man. I love you. Stay safe. Thank you all for listening, and we'll be talking to you soon.